Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us today for and listening in to this volunteer water quality monitoring training. If you're watching this video, it's because you want to learn more about how Anacostia Riverkeeper and its partners do recreational water quality monitoring up in the streams and tributaries in Maryland. And so today we'll have a quick recording here for you to listen along, learn a bit more about what we monitor, how we monitor, why we monitor, as well as get some information on how you can get involved. There'll be a short quiz at the end of the video, and then you'll be well on your way to starting to be one of our volunteer monitors. So, Anacostia Riverkeeper runs this partnership, this monitoring site up in Maryland, thanks to a lot of funders and partners. So, of course, I want to make sure we thank those funders. Chesapeake Bay Trust funds this project, specifically our Montgomery County site, in partnership with Montgomery County DEP. So, we're really thankful for the funding and allowing this program to occur. Across Maryland, we work with Neighbors Northwest Branch, Friends of Sligo Creek, Defensores de la Cuenca, One Montgomery Green, Joe's Movement Center and Jones Green Work Team, Friends of Lower Beaver Dam Creek, Sustainable Heights Full Friends Quincy Run, and a lot more other the sub-watershed partners that help us get all this work done. So we don't do this alone. You'll get to know our partners as you get involved in the program, and we're so thankful for them and our funders and partners for that support. And so as we get started today, I want us to start think about what gets into the streams, right? Why is water quality monitoring a program? Why do we need to monitor streams? Why might they not be safe, either to recreate in or for the plants and animals might live in there? And think about, and I'm give you some think time here. What is getting in our streams that are making them unsafe? We know that in urban streams, there are a lot of things in the water that make it not safe for humans, not safe for the animals and the plants that might be living in there. That ranges from the trash pollution we know is ubiquitous in the Anacostia watershed, chemicals leaching from tires leading to high chemical properties. We know that there also is a lot of salt on the roads. That salt on the roads during these weird Maryland winters lead to high chlorine levels in our watershed, which is not safe for the animals and plants living in there. We know that we have, with all the erosion happening, some pretty shallowly buried sewer pipes that can leak, as well as a lot of dog waste, animal waste, bird waste that leads to fecal contaminants in the watershed, as well as all these roads that have petroleum contaminants in the water. We also know that as we love our beautiful green lawns and golf courses, those extra nutrients, the nitrogen and phosphorus pollution, also leads to eutrophication and pollution levels in our watershed. So there's lots of things going on in these urban watersheds that mean they need to have a little bit of special attention paid to them. And the one thing I wanted to point out is the reason why this is such a big problem in urban watersheds is because of impervious surfaces. I grew up in rural Vermont. There, when it rains, the rain hits the dirt, the soil of the forests and the meadows. That water percolates through, getting naturally filtered before it hits any streams. And so, in us rural watersheds, a lot of things I just listed aren't a problem because natural soils and natural wetlands allow that to filter out. However, in the DMV, we know we have a lot of impervious surfaces. We've seen increasing percentage cover about 20% in the last 2 decades in the Washington, D.C. area as people build more roads and parking lots and rooftops. And all that impervious surface just means that when it rains, rather than filtering through, it just washes into the stream, picking up everything on the grass, on the parking lots as it goes. And all those contaminants are entering the watershed. A lot of people don't know this, but when you see those storm grates on the side of the road, when you see these little culverts entering your streams, that is just that storm water that was on the street. So those storm grates on the side of the street, please know those do not get filtered. Those get whisked right to your local creek, whether it be Lower Beaver Dam Creek or Quincy Run, whether you're talking about Sligo Creek, Long Branch, Northwest Branch, Northeast Branch, Paint Branch. Anytime you have water on the side of the street that goes into the storm drains, those culverts just dump right out in the creek. There's no filtration. So all of those things we talked about on the roadways, those are just getting moved directly to the street. And we see people sometimes dumping things down these drainages, thinking that maybe those drainages get cleaned and sorted, get filtered, go to a wastewater treatment. And in our MS4 system, where we have separate stormwater systems, there is no treatment for stormwater. And so we know that a lot of people are putting contaminants into the stormwater either on purpose or because stormwater picks things up as it moves across impervious surfaces. Those contaminants are getting in our watershed. As stormwater gets more and more intense with climate change and increased impervious surfaces, we also are seeing a lot of erosion in our local streams, right? Northwest branch, I'm thinking of particular, you get up towards the North Paint branch is also really known for this, as you see these deep cut gullies along the sides of the creeks. All that extra sediment again carries legacy toxins as it travels down the watershed. You see examples of sedimentation here that might be from construction runoff, right? From poorly treated and poorly maintained construction sites. But also, as all this erosion occurs, those sewer pipes that are kind of traveling again, taking household sewage to get treated, those ones are getting eroded and getting exposed to air. More cracks are occurring and sewage leaks are occurring into the watershed, meaning that not just the dog and the bird waste is getting into the watershed, but we do know that human contaminants can get in. As our MS4, our sewage pipes are getting exposed more to air due to erosion, due to the weird temperatures, the thawing and freezing of the local dirt, as climate change kind of makes some weird temperature patterns in the winter. And we do know that this is all leading to a lot of fecal contaminants and recreational contaminants in our watershed. So, in our program, there are a lot of things we could be and we should and we do monitor as part of this. However, the program you'll be participating in, our community science program, we're focusing on recreational as well as a few storm and stream health parameters to understand and capture quick snapshots of water quality to communicate back to the public. So our focus is recreational water quality. And so we're looking at 3 EPA methods of determining if water is safe to recreate or not. We're looking at E. coli, an index bacteria. That is a fecal bacteria. It will develop in the warm-blooded stomachs of all types of animals, humans, dogs, birds. And so we'll be looking and measuring how much E. coli is in the water as one of our primary indicators of if that water is safe to recreate and not. We additionally look at turbidity, which is really just suspended particles, those sediments in the water. If there are high levels of turbidity, lots of suspended cloudy looking water, not only does that make it not fun to recreate in, no one wants to get mud on themselves when they swim, but more critically, those suspended particles are likely to be transferring or carrying other types of pollutants that could make a recreator sick. We also look at pH. We're looking for that neutral 6.5 to 8 range. That's around that 7 neutral pH. Anything outside, either acidic or basic, would be unsafe for someone recreating, as well as just unsafe for general stream health. We also are going to be taking some stream temperature. As we know, trees are coming down across the watershed, stream temperatures are rising. So it's a great way for us to kind of take that quick peeks, looking at stream temperature, looking at ecological health, as well as working with Smithsonian in our Maryland program to look at levels of nitrogen, phosphorus, nutrient cycling. Again, looking to see if there's excess stormwater runoff that might be influencing the water, but also looking to see if any of those parameters could indicate stormwater or sewage leakages. Again, our focus in this program is on bacterial monitoring. We are a recreational water quality focus at Anacostia Riverkeeper, and many of our partners do a lot more stuff with just general ecological health. A lot of our partners do really cool stuff with the mackerel, benthic, little invertebrates in the water. We do more ecological testing in different ways throughout the watershed, but today, this program you're training for focuses on recreational health. Should people splash in that water or not? And so we're focusing on that bacterial health. Bacterial can be harmful. E. coli is a fecal bacteria that we know comes from feces from a dog or a leaky sewage system in the water. And if that pathogen is ingested, it can cause generally digestive distress. So it could make you quite ill. We use the EPA method IDEX system. We're looking to see how many colony forming units. So if you drank that water, how much bacteria would go in your stomach. Note that E. coli is a generally accepted index bacteria. That means that we are obviously measuring bacteria, but there are other non-E. coli bacteria in that water. However, studies time over time have showed that if E. coli levels are high, the bad other stuff might also be in there. The parasitic bacteria, the flushing bacteria could be high, but in situations where E. coli is low, it is showing that index bacteria is showing that likely those other negative health impact bacteria would be low as well. So we only report E. coli, but it's generally understood to be a good index to tell you if it's safe or not to recreate. And so, my tech is being run. We do monitor at several locations across both Montgomery and Prince George's County. They're separate programs, but we're kind of going to talk about them interchangeably in this training, because once you're fully trained, you can kind of choose which site you want to travel to. So we monitor on Sligo Creek, Long Branch, and Northwest Branch up in Montgomery County. So we have 2 Northwest Branch sites, 2 Long Branch sites, and 4 Sligo sites for a total of 8 sites monitored. And Prince George's County, we monitor 2 other sites on Northwest Branch down when they get to lower after the Sligo confluence. We also monitor at Paint Branch, Northeast Branch, Quincy Run, and Lower Beaver Dam Creek, some of the Prince George tributaries, as well as at Bladensburg Waterfront Park, which is the most northern upwater side of the Anacostia River itself. And so as you sign up to monitor, as you determine that you want to be involved in this program, that's, remember, the background of what we're monitoring and why we're monitoring it. Looking at that recreational focus, really thinking at these various locations in different weather conditions, is it safe to recreate or not? So in terms of your volunteer responsibilities, if you choose to continue to volunteer with us, all of our monitoring takes place between 7 and 10 a.m. on Wednesday morning. We want to have all those volunteers going out. It's every other Wednesday, kind of simultaneously in that same window of time, grabbing samples across the watershed so we can look at upstream and downstream trends, look at weather impacts on different sites. And then we're doing it Wednesday morning at all times. So you'll sign up to monitor. Monday, Tuesday, you'll be looking for looking in your email inbox for information, all the helpful tips and hints and reminders about monitoring that week, as well as information on where to pick up your designated supplies from. We have places you can pick up in both Prince George and Montgomery County, and so you'll just run to one of those spots and pick up your cooler with all the equipment you need for sampling. You'll go out to your site. We do have those designated sites that tell you exactly coordinate-wise what rock and to sit on and what stream to pick up those samples from. And you'll do that sampling between 7 and 10 a.m. And we'll have locations for you to drop off your completed samples between 8 and 10 a.m., allowing them to get processed in our lab with a short sampling holding time, because bacteria samples have to get processed really quickly after collection. I'll note that on occasion, we might bump to a Thursday morning sampling if Wednesday morning is a really, really, really bad storm. As I said, a lot of the pollutants in our watershed are stormwater or rain influence. So do know that we generally do go out and sample in the rain. However, if it's a very intense rain, if it's active thunderstorms, we do hold the right to postpone till Thursday. So when you head out Wednesday, if you see bad weather, keep an eye on your email, keep your phone ringer on, because we'll reach out if we do decide to push sampling to Thursday just for safety reasons. It takes me about 24 hours to process your samples that are in on Wednesday. By Thursday afternoon or Friday, that data will be shared to you in your email as well as all out on social media. We encourage you to share it to your community members, let them know what you were part of, and help make sure that they have the information they need to make their recreational choices that weekend. So first step is to sign up. Once you complete this monitoring training today, I'll be sending you a Google Sheet, which will have all the months of the summer and all the sites. It's a complete choose your own adventure. Some people choose to do every other week. All those sampling weeks you're coming out, you're doing the same site, and that's just your site for the summer. You're welcome to take that route. You're also welcome to choose a couple weeks when you happen to not be around on vacation or weeks that you don't have other obligations. Maybe you just want to sample once because you have other things you want to do on Wednesday morning. That's a-okay with us. You can also sample on multiple weeks and choose different sites each time. Get a tour of the watershed. To choose your own adventure, but when you sign up, you'll just put your name next to the site you want to sign up at. Notice that you can choose to sign up with a partner or friend or put X's under your name if you want to do it solo. We do recommend going with someone else. Again, safety is a concern, but we understand if you have a busy morning and don't want to coordinate with anyone else. Make sure you give us your accurate contact information, both email and phone. We do most of our communication by email. However, in a last minute rain situation, we want an active phone number so we can reach out to you if there's a last minute issue with your site or safety, or if we're worried that your sample hasn't come in and want to check to make sure that you didn't get injured at your site. You'll note where you want to pick up your cooler from. That again, pickup will be the Monday, Tuesday before sampling. So I want to know where to leave your cooler for you to get. When estimately you want to go out and monitor. So again, if you've been a long time since sampling and I'm worried about you, I know to give a call and where you think you'll drop off your sample at. Again, we'll be having drop-off locations in both Prince George and Montgomery County. Some people choose to go whatever based on your own morning's commute. So let us know where to expect your sample so we can get those processed once they come in. Once you're signed up about again, the Friday before your sampling, we'll let you know that your cooler is at its location ready for pickup. Everything you need for sampling that week will be in that little cooler we give you, except for ice. We do ask you to provide ice. I have some ice packs if you need one, but you'd have to have access to a freezer to keep that ice pack cold in, because we're doing our bacteria sampling. Bacteria flourishes in warm environments. So, and the period of time between you collecting it and me processing it, which sometimes can be 4 to 5 hours, they need to be kept on ice cold so the bacteria doesn't grow within that bottle. And so having ice is important. It can be an ice pack if you have any reusable ones from a medical shipment or something. You can use a water bottle used through in the freezer overnight to let freeze. Someone last year used some frozen peas and they worked really well. So whatever works for you in order to make sure your sample stays cool in the cooler. If you do monitor with a partner, only one of you needs to deal with pickup supplies. You'll be sharing that cooler when you get to your site. Generally, supplies are available at my house. I live in Silver Spring on Dennis Ave. We'll might have some different locations available. Make sure you check your email to know where to go that week to get it, but likely my house if you're in Montgomery County. And then Joe's Movement Emporium in Mount Rainier will be the site in Prince George's County to pick your coolers up at. On Wednesday morning, you head out to your field, again, watching your email, staying by your phone if weather looks poor. We'll touch base and say, yes, it's raining, but let's still go for it. Or, you know what, let's postpone until Thursday. This feels dangerous. Generally, we try to make the call the night before so you're not waking up to frantic emails, but sometimes sneaker storms happen. So stay involved, keeping your email and phone on you so we can get in touch if something changes. Make sure you're using your manual. We'll provide you both with a digital PDF version of the manual as well as a printed one after you pick up your cooler. And that will tell you exactly where your site is. We do want to make sure you're going to the exact precise rock on a creek tree branch that I tell you to sample at. So we have consistency between sampling weeks. And so there'll be a little Google map with a pin on it. There'll be coordinates if you're someone who likes to use Google Maps or another application to navigate to a site. I'll have pictures suggesting where the best place to park is, a nice walking path, picture of a tree. I'll try to put flagging tapes on a tree to help you know exactly where to go. If you're ever at a site and something has changed or you can't find the exact location to sample at, you'll have our phone numbers to get in touch so we can help you get to the exact right location. Once you're at your site, you're going to collect the data. You're going to have a couple of physical parameters that you measure with tools we provide, as well as some bottles that you'll collect water in that I'll be processing back in our lab. You'll always want to do these samples in the same order because there are just a couple things that could go wrong if you sample in the wrong order. So you always want to start with temperature, pH, and then grabbing your various samples for processing. So temperature first, you do air temperature generally first because air can be a little bit warmer, but also because of evaporative cooling, if you get the thermometer wet, it kind of like skews air temperature a bit colder if you did it in reverse. Air temperature first, they're a pretty classic thermometer. Make sure you remove this plastic sheath, which is generally going to be protecting the thermometer before. Remove the sheath, turn it on. Notice it came out of an ice cold cooler, so it's going to take a little while to get to temperature. You'll generally wait 3 to 5 minutes. Again, it's coming out of an ice cold cooler. It's a warm morning, so it takes a little time to acclimate to the current air temperature and record once it kind of stops bouncing that final digit, the point something. You want that point something to stay the same for about 5 seconds. That's when you know it's equilibrated and ready to be recorded. Repeat that process, dipping just the tip, maybe about an inch or so of the tip of that thermometer into the water. Don't bury it into the sediments. Have it nice sitting in like the mid column of flow, so halfway between the surface and the substrate on the bottom. Again, waiting till that point something stops bouncing around, stays the same digit for about 5 seconds, and record on your data sheet. Next, you're going to take pH. We use pH strips just like you probably used in a middle or a high school chemistry lab. They all with these kind of hard plastic strips with a small felt pad at the bottom, and that felt pad is the pH measuring. You're going to dip that little felt pad in the water for about 60 seconds to absorb a ton of water, and then let it develop for a few minutes. You'll notice it changes color. When they're unused, they're orange, but you're going to watch it change color, hopefully to kind of a more greenish color where the neutral water will be. If you use them in high school lab, usually it would take a couple seconds for that color change to happen because we do store the pH strips in a cooler with ice. Cold temperatures slow down chemical reactions. So that's why we're telling you the vial will say wait about 60 seconds to read the color change, knowing that we're storing these in ice cold water. It can take up to 3 minutes for that color to fully change. Record that. If you feel like it's between the 6 and the 7, it's a little bit in that wiggle room there, feel free to use a 0.5 designator, say it's in between the two. Make sure your pH strip goes back into the cooler in a trash bag in a pocket. Don't litter, and then move on to your next step. At this point, you're going to be gloving up because I'll have nitrile gloves provided for you in your kit. You're taking samples. You're going to be coming in contact with water at this point. So if you didn't already put on the gloves for the pH strip steps, please glove up. Those gloves are going to protect you from the potential fecal contaminants that we are measuring in the water, but also in case your hands might get contaminated from any of your own personal life experiences. We don't want your any hands or potential fecal contaminants on your hands getting into the bottle. So glove up first. It always helps just to write down the date, maybe your site name SC3 for Sligo 3 or LB1 Long Branch 1 QR1 for Quincy Run. Label the bottle with a quick Sharpie so we know and you have a clear label on that bottle. Your gloves are on. I'll note that your bacteria bottle will always be sealed with a label. Right now, this picture is showing a label with just paper. Sometimes they come with a more classic plastic shrink wrap around the cap. Depends on the lot number the manufacturer sends me, but your bottle will always be sterile and sealed. And inside the bottle is a fine white powder, maybe like a quarter teaspoon of it, so not that very much, but that powder is A, expensive, and B, important. That powder is actually going to bind with any chlorine or contaminants in the water that could kill bacteria. So we want to make sure that powder is not spilled. So once you take that cap off, don't invert it and lose my powder, please. That powder needs to be there to be dissolved with the water sample you collect. Imagine my hand is a stream flowing this way and this hand has a bottle in it. You're going to give a scoop in the water, almost pushing the bottom of the bottle down into the water and letting it fill, not with a top surface of water, but again, we're aiming for a nice mid-column sample. There's a 100 ml mark on your bottle. I need at least 100. If you fill it to a brim, I'm happy. You'll then seal the bottle using a sleeve or a provided paper towel. Dry the bottle off. There'll be an adhesive little sticker label to put on, which you'll put that label on and fill out with the date, time, and site, and then put it in your cooler next to the ice. Again, labels will be provided. They're little stickers, so you'll peel them off and they're a sticker, almost like I think I use address labels basically for an envelope. Your site ID, that will be, again, this picture says some of our DC sites. You guys will be doing our Maryland sites, which will be SC for Sligo, LB Long Branch, NEB or NWB for Northeast Northwest Branch. There'll be a number. You'll have your initials, who took that sample, when it was taken, date and time. Please be as specific as possible at the time. I, in the lab, have a couple hundred samples I'm processing each day, and I always want to process them based on when that sample was taken. So knowing when that sample was taken allows me to make sure that I always process samples within 5 hours holding time. That's why I'm asking you guys to monitor a specific time and get them to those sites as quickly as possible so I can make sure I process all the samples you give me within the allotted 5-hour holding time that I'm told by my manufacturer to do. Once you take one quick note on your bacteria, every now and then your cooler is going to come with 2 bacteria bottles in them. This is just for QA, QC, quality assurance, quality control. Basically, sometimes I run 2 samples and make sure the 2 numbers, they're slightly different grabs of water. It's just making sure that my procedures are living up to quality standards. So our data is allowed to be used by Maryland Department of Environment in their reporting. If you have 2 bottles in your cooler, I'll try to send you an email reminder saying, hey, you're going to have 2 bottles this week. Please take both. If you have 2 bottles, take 2 bottles. If you have 1 bottle, don't worry about it. Once you're done taking your bacteria sample, you'll be taking turbidity sample. These will be in, like, think of them as little mini Nalgene bottles. They're the same size of bacteria bottles, but they're a bit more opaque. They're a softer type of plastic, and they'll be reused week by week. So by the end of the summer, you'll see some sticker residue kind of building up on them. Your turbidity bottle will be used again to capture water, and I'm looking to see suspended substrates or little floating pieces of dirt and specks in there to see that measurement and comparing to the EPA standards. You might want to take a shuffle step a little bit upstream. All your pH and temperature and turbidity bottle might have stirred up some sediment, so go a little bit above the flow, maybe like 2 to 5 feet above, just to get a place that you haven't already messed around with the dirt and stirred up any substrate. With the turbidity bottles, you actually, because we reuse them week to week, it's really critical you rinse that bottle. So any of last week's sample or soap when I cleaned it is rinsed out. So similar, you'll scoop against the flow, dumping down flow so you don't dump water that then you collect the next time. Scoop, scoop, scoop. You're going to have 3 scoops that you rinse, and then you're going to take that 4th scoop. That 4th scoop, fill it to a brim. That means as much water as you can get in that bottle is the amount of water I want to have. Screw the cap on securely, use that same adhesive label with the same thing. I'll tell the difference in the lab because the two bottles look different. And then make sure that's in the cooler next to ice. We don't want any algae to grow on that bottle between your sampling time and my processing time. That would mess up my turbidity reading. So make sure that's tucked right next to your ice pack like the bacteria bottle was. Finally, you'll be taking a couple samples. These ones are going to be big Nalgene bottles, 1 liter Nalgene bottles. So think about the ones you generally use for drinking. All of these samples we use to test for all different types of organic phosphates and nitrates in the water, looking to see if there's any impacts of fertilizers or other wastewater in the system. But we'll also be using this water to do some more intensive bacteria sampling called MST, microbial source tracking, looking to see if any of those other bacteria in there, as I said, E. coli is an index bacteria, but we always want to verify nothing else is in there. We're so thankful Smithsonian is doing this work with us this year, but really critically with that E. coli, every E. coli is a little bit genetically different depending if it lives in a human gut or a dog gut or a bird gut. So they're going to do some genetic work with that E. coli to not just say, hey, there's fecal contaminants in water, but say, hey, this is human and we need to look for leaky sewer pipes, or hey, this is dog. We need to really up our pet game waste disposal in this area. You'll treat these just like those small turbidity bottles. You'll scoop, rinse 3 times. Taking that 4th bottle, you don't need to scoop the entire bottle full when you're rinsing, just halfway full, give it a nice shake. But that 4th time, please do your best to fill it as full as you can. If you're in a nice deep stream, invert it, allow it to fill. Try not to get scum from the top or dirt from the bottom. In a narrow stream, you can do the darn best you can, and some substrate and some surface scum's going to get in because it's a shallow stream. Once you get it, secure it, try to store them upright so substrate drips to the bottom and doesn't continue to be suspended in the water, and put it in your cooler close, but not as critically close to the ice pack as you can. Once all your samples are collected, just make sure your field sheet is completed. Note you'll have your air temperature and pH and water temperature. You took that in the first couple steps of it, but you also have some observations on the weather and stream conditions. These are qualitative, so you're going to select the word that best fits what you see that day. The water surface, is it calm? Do you see ripples? Do you see waves? Not so much in streams, but you never know. Stream flow, is it going fast or slow? Is the water high or is it low? Water color, most of the time you're going to circle normal, learning that water can be anything from clear to slightly brown or even slightly green. We'll call that normal. If you feel it's abnormal, please leave a nice description for me of what that color is. Pictures are great. Pictures say a little bit more than the word choice you might have to. And then also any other observations, the things you might be seeing in the water at that same time. Oil slicks, dead fish, erosion, foam, debris, which can include trash items, and then SAV, that's submerged aquatic vegetation. The one good thing is if we see any aquatic vegetation growing, that's a sign of a really healthy ecosystem. A couple check boxes just to help you make sure, yes, I did the things I'm supposed to do today, and that your field sheet will be complete. Notice on the back of your field sheet, you'll always have something called a chain of custody form. Basically, think you're in Law and Order or whatever your favorite kind of crime show or medical drama might be, because we do use this data for some regulatory uses. We do want to have a chain of custody where you say, yes, I took the sample, and then sign that sample over to me or whoever your drop-off person might be. So you'll know any of the samples you took. This person went to multiple sites, so has quite a few, but if you just had one site, you'll have less. What your sample ID is, that sample ID is your site name, the date and time you took the sample, what type of sample it is, bacteria, turbidity. You guys would also maybe have those nutrient bottles to write down. Is it a normal or a duplicate? So if you had 2 bacteria, you'll have 1 normal, 1 duplicate. Normally they're all normal. Any remarks if you notice anything might have gone wrong with that sample, if you think you might have got some solid scum or substrate by accident, that's a great place to note that. And then once you drop it off, we'll sign it saying that your samples have been left your custody and entered into mine or whoever is taking them over. This is the fun Law and Order one. It does allow us to, again, have that quality assurance and use this data for regulatory uses. Before you leave your site, make sure everything is labeled. It's just a great check. You have a Sharpie to write directly on the bottle. You have pens and sticky labels. I'd rather things be over labeled rather than under labeled. So label away. Make sure things are in the cooler, that they're in the ice, but we don't want to make sure there's no like ice water that might submerge into the bottle. So make sure they're upright and they're not floating loosely in some loose ice. Check your field sheet. Make sure you circled all those observations. Make sure you have that chain of custody filled out, noting what exact time you took those samples. So the time will be slightly different because it usually takes a minute or two to go through each sampling one. And please pack out the trash. So the back of the sticker labels, your pH strip, the gloves, put those right in the cooler. When we get to your drop-off site, we can help get the trash out of there for you. I'd rather it be done trash by us than left in the stream. Trash mitigation is another one of our priorities here at Anacostia Riverkeeper and most of our partners. And then please take a good picture. I have to do so many reports and presentations. And so a nice selfie, especially if you see something interesting, good or bad at your site, taking a picture and noting what's happening. This helps me with reporting. That helps me share data on social media. It's always fun to see your face that week. Take pictures. What happens from there on out? And I'm sorry, it is freezing on me. Here we are back. You're going to drop off your sample. Again, we'll have a partner at Tacoma Piney Branch Park near that dog park there to pick up your samples. That's at 2 Darwin Ave in Tacoma Park. That's close to all our Montgomery County sites. We also have a drop-off location at Joe's Movement Emporium. Joe's Greenworks employees will be there from 8 to 10 a.m. You'll drop your samples off with them, again, signing that chain of custody sheet. If anything happens in a spot beyond 10 a.m. and our site drop-off stations will actually start driving their samples into the lab. So if you're running late, you might need to drive to DC to get us that sample. Our office is at 729 8th Street in the Barracks Row area of DC. That's where all the samples get processed. So if you miss a drop-off location, you might need to bring it into us. So another reason to try to sample a little bit early. After your samples are dropped off, for your information, this is what I do in the lab. We use something called the IDEXX system. It is one of only 3 EPA approved ways to measure bacteria, E. coli in the water. We'll basically take that 100 ml bottle of water you gave us and mix in a colorant, which is really a fancy name for a fancy sugar. And that fancy sugar, when E. coli eats it, for a reason some microbiologists maybe will explain to me someday, they start to glow under a black light. That sugar gets worked into their DNA and will glow. So after that sugar gets mixed in, we just put them in these nice trays and put them in an incubator at 35°C. That's the temperature of your stomach lining for 24 hours to say if you drink that bottle, what would happen in your stomach. After 24 hours, we can shine a UV light. The tray has different size squares, and based on the ratio of little squares to small squares that glow, we can estimate the most probable number of colony forming units that happen to be in that bottle. The magical number is 410. If there's less than 410 colony forming units of bacteria, a healthy human's immune system would be able to fight off that bacteria. Having 0 E. coli in there is very rare. Double digits is pretty good and as good as you get, because again, there are natural living warm-blooded creatures in the watershed. So there's always going to be some level of fecal contaminants. As long as it's under 410, you're safe to recreate in that water. Your immune system, as long as you're not immunocompromised, is able to fight that off. Over 410, that's where public health officials think that that water is unsafe. And so we'll be communicating people if that number estimate is over 410 saying, hey, let's not recreate. Bacteria levels are high today. In terms of turbidity, we use the nephelometric turbidity unit. Basically, it shines light. We'll transfer your sample into these little clear glass vials, and that will shine light through that vial. The more light that passes through, the less sediment, the lower the turbidity. As less light passes through and rather gets reflected back, turbidity is higher. With turbidity, EPA says 20 nephelometric turbidity units, NTUs is the magical number. So again, you're never going to have crystal clear water. There's going to be a couple floaties in there at all times. But as long as that number of floaties, that turbidity is under 20, the EPA says that that's not so much sediments. There's a low probability of any pollutants being carried by that sediment, and so recreation is encouraged. This computer doesn't like me today. So the final step, guys, is to share your data. The primary way we'll share our data out is email it to you as our volunteers. Then you'll have a nice email to forward to any listservs you might be on in your neighborhood. Share with your neighbors so people have the way to recreate safely. We also share the data out on social media. So follow us on Facebook, Instagram, whatever your favorite social media is, Anacostia Riverkeeper. We also upload data to Chesapeake Monitoring Collaborative, which is a more technical website where a lot of different community science groups upload the data if you want to see what other people might be getting, as well as Swim Guide. Swim Guide is a fun app you can have on your phone across the nation. And actually, I think internationally people use it. So if you're traveling somewhere new, check out Swim Guide. That's just a simple red green. I know whenever I head to Chesapeake Beach, I see what the local measurement is to say, is it a good day to get in the water or not? So your next steps, you can scan this right here or type in this little bit.ly. This is going to take you to a certification quiz. That quiz is a open note quiz, so feel free to go back and rewatch sections of this YouTube video as you do it to see and make sure you get those answers right. It's just going to check your understanding and make sure you know the steps you need to take proper unbiased samples. Once that waiver, it also has a link to a smart waiver in there. Once the waiver and quiz have been passed, you're clear to kind of move to the next stage of monitoring. At that point, we'll reach out to you via email from monitor@anacostiariverkeeper.org. We'll have you start signing up for your sites, but before we have you go to the site by yourself, since you're doing this online virtual monitoring, the first time you sign up, myself or one of my coworkers will come with you, do that first round of sampling with you. We call that a stream side demo, which just means that we kind of help guide you through your first sampling method, kind of reinforcing some of the important steps that are hard to explain with hands and scooping. So the first time you sample, know that someone is going to be coming to join you. I might need to have you go to a different site or pick a different day if I don't have staff available, but since you did this virtually, you'll have that stream side demo component. But as soon as you take the quiz, we'll send you an email with your next steps. Thanks so much for listening in today, guys. If you had any questions on today's presentation or our morning program in general, please email us at monitor@anacostiariverkeeper.org. We'll answer you as quickly as we can.